For decades, the World Cup operated on a perfectly balanced mathematical framework. Starting with this 1998 tournament in France, the 32-team structure provided a clean, highly symmetrical pathway from the group stage to the final. The 2026 expansion breaks that symmetry. The tournament now accommodates 48 nations. To maintain competitive integrity, organizers divided the field into 12 distinct groups of 4. This creates an immediate structural problem. If only the top 2 teams from each group advance, that yields exactly 24 teams. The knockout bracket, however, requires 32. That leaves 8 empty spots. To fill out the rest of the bracket, the tournament relies on a wildcard system. The 8 highest-performing third-place teams from across those 12 groups are granted a lifeline into the newly created round of 32. By altering the underlying math, the stakes of the opening round shift entirely. The group stage transforms from a localized race into a massive, centralized survival bubble where teams compete against nations they will never actually play. Comparing 12 third-place teams from 12 entirely different groups requires a centralized ranking system, officially known as the Comparative virtual table. At first glance, the metrics used to rank these teams are exactly what you would expect. The table sorts them by overall points, then goal difference, and then total goals scored. This table shows what happens when teams tie on those traditional metrics. Their fate falls to a highly volatile secondary tiebreaker, the disciplinary score. Bad behavior on the pitch subtracts points, plummeting teams below the qualification line. The math is unforgiving. A single yellow card costs exactly -1 point. A direct red card removes 4. As the final group stage matches play out, this creates an environment of extreme volatility. Coaching staffs are forced to track scores and foul counts from games happening thousands of miles away in real time. A single reckless tackle, or even a moment of dissent toward a referee, can now mathematically eliminate a nation, completely independent of their actual win-loss record. Allocating 8 wildcard qualifiers into a fixed bracket presents a massive logistical puzzle. Dropping these teams into the knockout stage blindly carries a high risk of scheduling an immediate rematch between 2 nations that just played each other days prior. To solve this routing problem, organizers utilize a rigid set of instructions published deep in the competition regulations, known as the Annex C matrix. This calculation shows the scale of the variable. The advancing wildcards are pulled from a pool of 12 potential groups. Choosing 8 successful groups out of 12 yields exactly 495 possible qualifying combinations. For every single one of those combinations, Annex C has a pre-mapped solution. The moment the final whistle blows, the matrix instantly routes the 8 qualifying wildcards to specific designated matchups. However, to balance the competitive weight of the bracket, only 8 specific group winners draw these unpredictable third-place teams. Because these assignments lock at the last possible second, preparation becomes a monumental task. Coaching staffs must execute real-time, multi-scenario scouting just to survive the opening round. Beyond the math, teams must navigate the sheer physical scale of this tournament, spanning massive distances across Canada, Mexico, and the United States. To manage that immense geography, the 32-team bracket is strictly divided into left and right halves. Once a nation lands on their side of the bracket, they are locked into a dedicated regional pathway. This restricts travel distances and guarantees that teams from opposing halves cannot physically cross paths during the early knockout rounds. Those 2 logistical pathways run parallel for weeks, finally converging at a single geographic endpoint, the championship match at MetLife Stadium. Mastering this bracket demands a rigorous operational strategy, completely separate from tactical planning, to minimize the grueling physical toll of cross-continental travel. That travel schedule compounds a new athletic reality. Reaching the final now requires surviving an 8-match gauntlet, pushing teams past the historical limit of 7 games. To counteract this immense physical load and maximize active playing time, referees enforce an aggressive set of updated pace control directives. The most noticeable change is the 10-second substitution rule. When a player is called to the bench, they have exactly 10 seconds to exit the field from the nearest boundary line. If they exceed that window, the punishment is severe. The incoming substitute is frozen on the touchline for 60 seconds of active play, forcing their team to play shorthanded until the next natural stoppage. Referees can also initiate a visual 5-second countdown on throw-ins and goal kicks. If a player hesitates and the count expires, possession is immediately turned over to the opposition. These directives deliberately strip away a team's ability to catch their breath during natural stoppages. They weaponize fatigue against slower, less disciplined squads. If a knockout match remains tied after 90 minutes, teams are forced into a full 30-minute extra time period. There are no sudden death golden goals to provide an early escape. To cope with that sustained intensity, substitution allowances scale dynamically. Teams receive an extra change and an additional tactical window to help them survive the brutal 120-minute physical load. Every element of this tournament is interconnected. Expanding to 48 teams created the wildcard chaos, which required the massive combinatorial algorithm, which ultimately led to relentless tempo rules designed to keep the games moving. A talented starting 11 cannot survive this format alone. Winning the 2026 World Cup demands deep algorithmic preparation, flawless operational discipline, and a roster built to survive the most intense physical and mathematical gauntlet in football history.